people. Now there are about more than 200,000 people affected due to floods, and we are actually collecting from various donors and volunteers directions and other things and distributing among those who are affected.
President of Nabivya Youth Islamic Organization, Rishan Hamid, stated that their organization was making more than 2,500 meals for people affected in the area.
Now, every disaster, we get together and the immediate step is to feed them. So we feed at least each meal over 2,500 meals we are serving. So the affected families are over 5,000, but still we feed according to the capacity that we have.
Sri Lankan authorities stopped passenger trains and closed roads in many parts of the country after rocks, mud and trees fell on the roads and railway tracks. In such a disastrous situation, India has extended a helping hand to Sri Lanka, and as a part of its ongoing relief efforts, the Indian Air Force has positioned Mi-17 V5 helicopters in Colombo for swift HADR operations. Under Operation Sagar Bandhu, Chetak helicopters from INS Vikrant carried out search and rescue sorties in Sri Lanka, supporting people affected by Cyclone Thaw. According to officials, Thaw, which developed in the seas east of Sri Lanka, is likely to move towards India's southern coast by Sunday. It is now stagnant 80 kilometers inside the sea near Nagapattinam and is 160 kilometers away from Puducherry, while 210 kilometers away from Chennai. A red alert has also been issued to Puducherry and Kuddalore, whereas orange alert has been issued to Chennai and Ranipet, as the northern part of the state is set to receive heavy rains. As rescue teams push through flooded regions and authorities brace for Cyclone Thaw's next move along the Indian coast, the coming hours will be crucial.
Our pure Shahi Paneer Masala. Delicious, healthy, every day.
इसको घर पे लगाओगे तो शादी का तो पता नहीं, पर घर पक्का नहीं टूटेगा।
रुंगटा नहीं तो घर स्ट्रॉन्ग नहीं। रुंगटा स्टील TMT बार एकदम सॉलिड।
पहाड़ों में एक हाइकिंग स्टिक भी बन सकती है।
दादी के हाथों का जादू और खुशबू से महकता घर, माँ की मुस्कुराहट और खाने की सुगंध। MDH गरम मसाला,
क्योंकि हर रिश्ता है स्वाद से जुड़ा।
आर प्योर सूजी पास्ता, उबालो मिलाओ और खाओ,
8 मिनट में तैयार।
क्या टेस्ट है सबका राजा आर प्योर मसाला।
Our pure Shahi Paneer Masala. Delicious, healthy, every day.
MDH की देगी मिर्च,
देगी मिर्च का तड़का, अंग अंग फड़का।
MDH की देगी मिर्च।
थोड़े में ज्यादा स्वाद, यही तो है इसकी खास बात। वाओ मामा, क्या स्वाद है। अरे मेरे राजा, सबका राजा आर प्योर मसाला।
So in the past we would see most of the
from Asia's largest news headquarters, setting the agenda for Bharat. You're watching Republic.
Hi there, good evening. Hope you had a great Sunday. And now it's time to look forward to the coming week. Welcome back to this week's edition of Looking Forward. The show is about stories that are shaping up over the coming days and weeks. News that is developing and would have consequences for your life and mine and impact our choices. Stories that shape India's and world's politics and economics going forward. So let's get going. Tonight's edition packs a punch with 5 big news developments that are to take place over the week and beyond. Story number 1 ushers in the winter session of Parliament tomorrow. As the opposition seeks to put the Treasury benches on the mat over the SIR issue, the government would want an ideological reveal over Vande Mataram perhaps. And then there is the legislative agenda, of course. A national security and public health cess on certain goods like cigarettes. Story number 2 would give you a lowdown on the Russian President Vladimir Putin's first state visit to New Delhi since the Ukraine war began. Against global tensions and advancing US-Ukraine peace talks, this summit puts India's strategic autonomy and diplomacy under the spotlight, with defense and energy ties taking center stage. Story number 3 tonight takes us to Moscow, where US envoy or presidential envoy Steve Witkoff arrives for high-stakes talks amid diplomatic turmoil and conflicting peace claims over Ukraine, whether we have a deal or not. Did Trump jump the gun? More importantly, did he read from a Russian wish list? That's the talk. Story number 4 takes us to West Bengal, back home, where the Mamata Banerjee government has unexpectedly reversed course on the contentious Waqf Amendment Act after months of resistance. With the crucial deadline looming, we delve into what prompted this dramatic political shift in the state, for the first time on the SIR issue also. And finally, story number 5 is on the thawing of India-Canada trade relations after a prolonged freeze triggered by diplomatic tensions. With fresh talks set to resume, have we put the Trudeau era firmly behind us? Let's begin with the headlines first. As the Parliament meets for the winter session, the opposition gears up to raise the issue of special intensive revision of electoral rolls. Parliamentary Affairs Minister Kiran Rijiju stated after an all-party meet today that the government was open to discussing electoral reforms, but SIR is an administrative process under the jurisdiction of the Election Commission. The Delhi police has filed a fresh FIR in the National Herald case naming Rahul Gandhi, Sonia Gandhi and Sam Pitroda. Yet again, the Delhi Police Economic Offences Wing has charged the three of alleged fraudulent transactions of over 2,000 crore rupees in response to a complaint filed by the Enforcement Directorate. The FIR has intensified possible political troubles for the Gandhi family as investigations into the newspaper's finances continue. We're in final stages in Chhattisgarh with a significant number of Maoists surrendering in Dantewada. 37 of them, including 12 women, laid their arms today, marking a major breakthrough in the government's efforts to curb left-wing extremism. Eastern coastal states remain on high alert. Delhi police has The Delhi police have busted a terror module arresting 3 terror suspects with ISI links. Eastern coastal states remain on high alert with cyclone Thaw moving northwards, causing torrential rains in the region. The cyclone had hit Sri Lanka before impacting Tamil Nadu, causing over 200 deaths in the country. The Indian Air Force, along with NDRF, are carrying out Operation Sagar Bandhu, a rescue operation for the flooded regions of Sri Lanka. Even as low-lying areas in Tamil Nadu, Puducherry and Andhra Pradesh are also being closely monitored. Last, Damocles sword hangs over Pakistan Army Chief Field Marshal Asim Munir as the notification extending his tenure and making him the first Chief of Defence Forces is pending due to Prime Minister Shehbaz Sharif's absence. Pakistan media reports suggested Munir might have to wait till Sharif returns from London, where he has gone to confabulate with his elder brother and former Prime Minister Nawaz Sharif. Welcome again. The winter session of Parliament is off the mark tomorrow. While the opposition shrill would make sure there's no chill, the government would expect some business transacted. Hot on the plate are 3 bills and many oaths for the new members in the Rajya Sabha. Then there are hot button issues for the government, a discussion on Vande Mataram, and for the opposition, an attempt to corner the treasury benches on the SIR and the BLO debts. For the citizens, of course, it's time to watch closely the actions of their representatives in the nation's highest panchayat and keep a record of who performed for them.
माननीय सभासदों, माननीय अध्यक्ष जी।
The winter session of the Parliament commences tomorrow, December 1st, 2025, and is scheduled to run until December 19th, spanning 19 days and 15 sittings.
Question number 101, Dushan Singh ji.
This session follows the disrupted monsoon session earlier in 2025 and comes amid the government's push for structural reforms post the NDA's Bihar Assembly election victory. The opposition, however, plans to raise issues like the special intensive revision of electoral rolls in 12 states and union territories, the Delhi blast, and foreign policy concerns potentially leading to heated battles. Discussions on Vande Mataram and its historical significance are also expected, with calls for its recitation in both houses.
सदन के अंदर अपनी सीट पे बैठिए। सदन स्थगित कर दूं? नहीं करना चाहते आप चर्चा?
जिस तरह से जल्दबाजी में SIR की जा रही है, इससे करोड़ों लोगों के वोट कटने की आशंका हो गई। गंभीर अनियमितता है, लोग आत्महत्या कर रहे हैं। देखिए, इस लड़के ने कल आत्महत्या की और चिट्ठी लंबी लिखी। देखिए, हम इस हाउस को नहीं चलने देंगे अगर SIR पर चर्चा नहीं होगी।
The Congress, walking on the footsteps of the Samajwadi Party, also plans to raise the issue of SIR and Delhi blast case.
इसमें हमारा मुख्य मुद्दा होगा कैसे लोकतंत्र की रक्षा हो, मतों के अधिकार की रक्षा कैसे हो, जो हमारा सबसे बहुमूल्य कोहिनूर हीरा मिला है देश की आज़ादी के बाद संविधान में। जिस तरह SIR कराई जा रही, इतने कम समय में तो एक जिले की नहीं हो सकती, पूरे प्रदेश की कैसे होगी। आतंकवादी गतिविधियां अब दिल्ली में आकर दस्तक दे रही, जिस तरह ब्लास्ट हुआ और जितनी रिकवरी है वो एक भयावह स्थिति है। पूरी तरह गृह मंत्रालय असफल हो गया है। और सबसे बड़ी बात है जिस तरह लोकतंत्र की हत्या, वोटों के अधिकार छीने जा रहे हैं, वो हमारा मुख्य मुद्दा होगा।
Meanwhile, the CPIM has also decided to corner the government on the issue of SIR majorly.
The entire opposition parties want these SIR issues to be discussed. And if the people of Bihar have concurred with SIR, what is the harm in having a discussion on that? Sanjay Jha was saying that SIR has been debunked by the people of Bihar. Okay, then you discuss that. And I also quoted the statement of the Parliamentary Affairs Minister saying that if you widen the topic, we will discuss. He said that if you bring in reforms, we will discuss. Okay, let us bring in the electoral reforms. Let us bring the whole lot of issues that are concerning the electoral politics there. Let us widen the topic. We are for that.
The government, however, has made its stand firmly clear that the SIR exercise will continue despite opposition from India Alliance, and if need be, a discussion will be held in the parliament.
देखिए, SIR ये हमारे इलेक्शन कमीशन का काम है। वो एक स्वतंत्र निकाय है, निष्पक्ष निकाय है। हमारे देश में लंबे समय से वो काम कर रहा है। जब कांग्रेस शासन में थी या और जो लोग शासन में रहे, आज वो विपक्ष में होंगे, उनके समय भी तो इस तरह की प्रक्रियाएं होती रही है। तो ये तो कोई नई कोई प्रक्रिया नहीं है। मतदाता सूची साफ सुथरी होनी चाहिए, ये प्रयास चुनाव आयोग का होता है और इस दिशा में बिहार में अभी SIR संपन्न हुआ, उसके बाद चुनाव भी हुई और विपक्ष को बिहार की जनता ने जवाब भी दिया है। उसके बावजूद भी वो मुद्दा बीच-बीच में उठाते रहते हैं।
The government aims for quote-unquote a constructive session, with an all-party meeting held today to ensure smooth proceedings, though the opposition demands debates on non-EC processes like the SIR, which could spark disruptions.
36 political parties और 50 लीडर्स अटेंड किए इस पार्टी में, इस मीटिंग में। ऑल पार्टी जो लीडर फ्लोर लीडर्स का मीटिंग में 36 पॉलिटिकल पार्टीज एंड 50 लीडर्स पार्टिसिपेटेड। मैं सरकार की तरफ से आश्वासन देता हूं कि विंटर सेशन ऑफ द पार्लियामेंट अच्छी तरह से चलाने के लिए हम इस तरीके से विपक्ष के साथ बातचीत करते रहेंगे। साथ साथ मैं विपक्ष पार्टी नेताओं से भी अनुरोध करूंगा कि पार्लियामेंट को अच्छी तरह से चलाने में सहयोग करें।
माननीय अध्यक्ष जी।
The previous monsoon session from July 21st to August 21st was marked by frequent disruptions over issues like Bihar electoral rolls and Operation Sindoor, resulting in one of the lowest productivity levels in the 18th Lok Sabha.
सभा की कार्रवाई अनिश्चित काल के लिए स्थगित की जाती है।
I request the opposition leaders of TMC, DMK from Kerala not to fall in the trap of Congress. The Congress pulled the same thing in Bihar election also, and we have seen people of Bihar have shown the result. They said if you don't talk about the issues that are related to the common man, instead of that, if we waste time in the parliament, and they've shown the result in Bihar. And I request the opposition parties not to fall in the trap of Congress again and stall the parliament on this issue. If you do that, you'll see the same result in Bengal and Tamil Nadu and Kerala. So I request them not to do it.
Despite running for the full 21 scheduled days, Lok Sabha functioned only 37 hours out of the 120 scheduled, a dismal 31% productivity. Meanwhile, Rajya Sabha functioned for 41 hours and 15 minutes out of the approximately 106 scheduled, another dismal 38.8% of productivity.
देखिए, सर्वदलीय बैठक संसदीय परंपराओं के अनुरूप आयोजित की गई है और सभी दलों के जो फ्लोर लीडर्स हैं, प्रतिनिधि हैं, वो इस बैठक में उपस्थित हुए हैं। माननीय राजनाथ सिंह जी की अध्यक्षता में सभी लोगों ने अपने अपने पक्ष रखे हैं और 14 बिल्स इस बार लिस्टेड हैं। सरकार की ये कोशिश होगी कि ये 15 दिन का हमारा जो वर्किंग डेज है विंटर सेशन में सुचारू ढंग से चले और सरकार की ओर से सभी राजनीतिक दलों से यही पेशकश की गई है कि सभी लोग सदन को सुचारू ढंग से चलाने में सहयोग करें और जो भी आवश्यक विषय हैं उस पर सरकार चर्चा के लिए समय भी निकालेगी। हमारी कोशिश होगी कि ये विंटर सेशन जो है इसका पूरी तरीके से जनहित में उपयोग हो सके।
The government has lined up around 10 bills for introduction, with a focus on opening sectors to private investment, easing compliance and consolidating regulations. Here's the summary of the key bills.
The major NDA alliance parties took up the issue of the infrastructure, the farmers, the policies and the bills to be introduced. Like there are many important bills like the Manipur Good and Tax Bill, Atomic Energy Bill and also National Highways, one financial bill which is about to come and tabled in this session of the Parliament along with the other bills as well. In total there are 13 bills and one amendment which will be tabled in this session of the Parliament, but major political parties only spoke about the SIR in this all-party meeting, and therefore the government is continually stating the political parties not to disrupt the House but rather cooperate the session, cooperate the House in the functioning of the session. So tomorrow we'll get to see exactly how the House transpires and how the entire affair of the session will unfold from morning till evening.
Other notable mentions include the Manipur Goods and Service Tax Bill and Central Excise Bill, along with maritime reforms. On the very first day, the Lok Sabha is set to table 3 new bills, including the Manipur Goods and Service Tax Second Amendment Bill to bring Manipur's GST in line with Centre's new GST slabs, the Centre Excise Amendment Bill, which is likely to simplify the CGST norms, and the National Security Cess Bill, which will levy new cess to support government's national security and public health missions. Meanwhile, in Rajya Sabha, The 3 newly elected members of parliament from Jammu and Kashmir of the National Conference will be administered the oath of office by new Vice President C.P. Radhakrishnan, who will be presiding over the session for the first time since former Vice President Dhankar's ouster. The session's success will depend on balancing these reforms with opposition's demands, potentially avoiding the monsoon session's pitfalls for higher productivity.
You see, in the interest of democracy, opposition parties do need to, address issues which face the people. Now, in Bihar, we saw how this SIR became a very big issue. And with the BJP now moving towards West Bengal, and again, we are going to see that, this SIR issue is going to be a very big part of the entire electoral process of the state, where the BJP is determined, like the Prime Minister said, the Ganges flows from Patna to West Bengal. So what they are looking at is how to get back into power in West Bengal, and this is something which the Congress has, and Rahul Gandhi is particularly has been facing this issue. He has been talking about it. He's been talking about how multiple votes are being cast by one person in different guises from different states, and how it's not a very fair and free election. So this issue does concern democracy. It does concern the people. It does concern the entire electoral process. So I think that the opposition is perfectly within its rights to take up this matter.
The problem of the Indian opposition is that they are the most disruptive ever. Their agenda is not to allow the government's agenda to go through. That's it. They don't want discussion. They don't want debate. Parliament is a place for policy, not permanent protests. And in spite of their efforts, we have managed to push through, and we have made sure that the functioning of the Parliament does not get hampered. Even if you look at the last session of Parliament, 12 out of the 14 bills introduced in Lok Sabha were passed. But, the opposition has a different agenda, but one goal: don't allow Parliament to function. So at some time it's Pegasus, sometimes it's CA, sometimes it's Manipur, sometimes it's SIR. It can be anything at all. Their one agenda is do not allow the government to function, and I think that's terribly negative, and we need to put a full stop to this. The work of the Parliament is not measured in the number of days we put into the Parliament. It is actually measured in the kind of result we have. So if you look at the budget session, the productivity of Lok Sabha was 118%, and this is in spite of the opposition's disruptions.
Will the House function to its productivity, or will the opposition yet again resort to stalling of the session? The time will tell, starting tomorrow.
सभा की कार्रवाई अनिश्चित काल के लिए स्थगित की जाती है.
All right, moving on. In the midst of a world divided by war and tariffs, against the backdrop of an ICC arrest warrant and a grinding Ukraine conflict, Russian President Vladimir Putin is flying down to New Delhi. On December 4th and 5th, Putin will be on his first state visit to India since the Ukraine war began. Amidst advanced US-Ukraine peace talks, this summit tests India's doctrine of peace and strategic autonomy, hosting President Putin despite Western pressure, while deepening defense and energy ties that have weathered Trump's tariff storm. As Modi's peace mantra echoes, we unpack why Putin chose India now, the S-400 success story, the Su or Sukhoi 57 revival, and how New Delhi balances Washington to protect national interests.
Putin's world travel has shrunk dramatically since Ukraine. With the ICC warrant in place, Putin's foreign visits have been limited, sometimes North Korea, sometimes China. Dropped from the G8, Putin has been attending even the BRICS summit virtually. But something changed this year, when Prime Minister Modi and President Putin shared a candid, long conversation inside the Russian president's limousine in Tianjin en route to their bilateral summit venue.
The last 10-11 years, Prime Minister Modi has also made a very personal relationship with the President Putin. And as you can see, the global geopolitics has changed. Politics within India has also changed. There is also change in Russia, but India-Russia partnership has been very stable. And this has shown by all, many recent, not just only by meetings, but, we can see that even during the Ukraine war, India has continued to take a very neutral position.
Now, despite the warrant, Putin is set to visit for a full 2-day Indian state visit, an honor India extends to him as a non-ICC state.
If a sovereign country decide to host any political leader, I think the countries have a right to do that. In fact, there has also been ICC warrant against the Israeli Prime Minister, but he has also visited many countries. So it's up to the because these are more or less political, I would say, judgments. So countries decide on their own, within their own foreign policy, how they want to conduct their foreign policy.
The timing of this visit is electric. Putin arrives amid US-Ukraine peace deal endgame. Meanwhile, India's position on the matter is consistent.
This is not an era of war. But it is one of dialogue and diplomacy.
President Putin's Delhi trip has been long brewing. NSA Ajit Doval and External Affairs Minister S. Jaishankar made multiple Moscow visits throughout 2025, keeping channels consistently warm.
We have had high-level engagements, and these high-level engagements have contributed very substantially. We are very excited and delighted to learn about the visit of His Excellency the President of Russia, President Putin, to India. I think that the dates are almost finalized now.
This particular occasion, for me, is all the more important as we prepare for President Putin's visit to India for the 23rd Annual Summit. A number of bilateral agreements, initiatives and projects are under discussion in various fields. We look forward to the finalization in the coming days. This will certainly add more substance and texture to our special and privileged strategic partnership.
India has maintained this strategic partnership despite the global headwinds and Trump's browbeating over Russian oil.
He's a friend of mine. We have a great relationship. I was not happy that India was buying oil, and he assured me today that they will not be buying oil from Russia. That's a big stop. Now I got to get China to do the same thing.
Before the war, Russian crude accounted for just 2% of India's imports. Post-sanctions, that share peaked above 40%, saving New Delhi over $17 billion in discounts. But in August, however, Trump imposed the world's highest tariffs on India in retaliation.
Well, buying oil from Russia has become a litmus test for India's strategic autonomy. There has been certain pressure from the United States. In fact, not just only pressure, they have also put 25% tariffs on Indian goods entering the United States because India is buying Russian oil. Despite that, India continued to buy, and it has also shown that that the decision to buy oil it is an independent decision by companies depending on market conditions, and this has also stabilized global markets, and it has also improved India's energy security.
While India has strategically reduced crude imports slightly while ramping up US LNG purchases, its all-weather partnership with Russia endures, as demonstrated by Putin's forthcoming state visit.
Putin tries to find more and more partners in the world, and it's critical for him to have India because this is one of the biggest countries with very big market and with needs to purchase arms and technologies. And he's the one who could provide it. So I'm not sure the cooperation in the defense sector will go on as it used to be. Maybe it's getting less, not that big. As it used to be because of this sanctions pressure, which is also not only on Russia but on India as well. So Narendra Modi has to, I think, has to find a way to escape sanctions pressure and at the same time to continue cooperation with Russia. It will be a challenge for India, I think.
This is because in defense, Russia still supplies 60% of India's combat aircraft inventory. Meanwhile, the S-400 Triumph system proved decisive during Operation Sindoor, emerging as a game-changer. Sources say that India is now seeking additional squadrons and missiles to replenish the stocks.
S-400 is one of the world's most effective air defense systems, the long-range air defense systems. And during Operation Sindoor, it was extremely effective in hitting all Pakistani incoming air assets, whether they were missiles, including some of the aircrafts which were airborne, they were hit. So this missile has given us a lot of strategical and operational tactical advantages.
The Russians have their own agenda. They have been keen on selling the Su-57 fifth generation fighter jet to India amid IAF's squadron strength crisis. While US has delayed Tejas engine deliveries, AMCA years away, and IAF's supposed rejection of the F-35 deal, Russia is now aggressively pitching the Su-57 with full technology transfer and Indian factories at the HAL Nashik, standing ready to modify and assemble.
The Indian Air Force will be very, very clear. They will carry out all analysis, and also what is kept in mind is the technical, technological aspect, but more than that, the economic aspect is also kept in mind. Tomorrow, if F-35s and Su-57s, there's just marginal difference of 19-20, then the cost factor becomes very, very important to us. And cost factor, I think, the past precedent shows that any equipment being imported from Russia is definitely much cheaper and more reliable, and therefore that itself shows that probably the best choice for India in the long run may be Su-57.
India-Russia bilateral trade hit $65 billion in 2024 with a $100 billion target, showcasing that Moscow and New Delhi are going strong.
In the situation we see now, the economy is really deteriorating. In Russia, it's getting worse and worse, and it's seen by all the people. Everything's getting more expensive. The prices go higher, and we see an inflation, and it's critical for Russian government to have more reliable partners to keep the economy up.
Despite their best efforts, West isolation of Moscow remains incomplete, with US-Ukraine talks reaching critical stages. Putin's India visit reinforces New Delhi's commitment to dialogue over confrontation.
I'm looking forward to my trip in early December, and I highly await my meeting with my dear friend, with our trustworthy partner, with Prime Minister Modi.
The December 4th to 5th summit represents India's multi-alignment doctrine at its most sophisticated. New Delhi is sending Washington an unmistakable message that while India partners through Quad, Russia remains the all-weather. As Modi welcomes Putin in Hyderabad House on December 5th, one principle stands supreme. India engages every major power on its own terms, talking to all, bending to none.
All right, in the midst of diplomatic chaos and frontline fury, against the backdrop of leaked calls and premature victory claims. US President's envoy Steve Witkoff flies to Moscow this week for high-stakes talks with Putin. Trump officials jumped the gun, claiming Ukraine agreed to a peace deal. But both Kiev and Moscow stayed silent. Amid the Witkoff leak storm, Putin defends the envoy as intelligent, as Russian strikes pound Vyshgorod and Tortesk. We unpack the red lines, European divides, and what Witkoff's Moscow gamble really means for Trump's endgame peace push.
Trump desperately wants his Ukraine peace win.
We're having good talks. We started with Russia. We're having some talks with Russia. Ukraine is doing well. I think they're pretty happy about it. They'd like to see it end.
Good afternoon, everybody.
However, last week, US officials once again jumped the gun, claiming Ukraine had accepted a deal. But both Ukraine and Russia have stayed tight-lipped.
Сьогодні ввечері, за американським часом, українська делегація вже має бути в Сполучених Штатах Америки і буде продовжений діалог на основі пунктів з Женеви. Дипломатія залишається активною. Американська сторона проявляє конструктив і цілком реально найближчими днями доопрацювати кроки, щоб визначити, як достойно закінчити війну. Українська делегація має необхідні директиви.
While Zelensky has confirmed talks continue, there is no deal yet. And despite the leak storm last month in US media alleging alleged call leaks showing Witkoff coaching Kremlin aides, saying that Trump is giving them quote-unquote space and discretion, Trump's troubleshooter Witkoff is headed to Moscow this week.
Steve Witkoff is going over, maybe with Jared. I'm not sure about Jared going, but he's involved in the process. Smart guy, and they're going to be meeting with President Putin, I believe, next week in Moscow.
While there is fury in Washington, D.C., Putin is defending Witkoff, making the matter entirely worse.
The leak of the conversation between Witkoff and the Russians, and then the leak of the later conversation between two Russians talking about what should be the Russian strategy with President of the United States, Donald Trump, shows that there is a division within the administration in terms of how Russia should be dealt with and whether or not Ukraine's sovereignty is worth saving.
It is not surprising for Ukrainians to hear in those tapes released by Bloomberg agency that Witkoff was actually coaching Russians how to speak to Trump. It was already very clear that Trump and Witkoff, they are taking more pro-Russian position. It's very obvious. When in tapes we see that actually he is helping Russians to learn how to influence Trump. Of course, we don't think this is right. He is the diplomat. He is the one who's representing American president. He should be advising American president. But it's up to American people and American leadership to decide whether it's acceptable thing for them.
И вдруг Соединенные Штаты объявляют о введении санкций против двух наших нефтяных компаний. Это в связи с чем? Я вам честно говорю, я даже не понял, а что происходит-то? Вот. Поэтому обвинять господина Уиткофа в том, что он уж больно, любезно обходится со своими российскими коллегами, не в чем. Мы с ним говорили, встречались, повторяю, на Аляске, а потом бум, при полном здоровье нарождающихся новых отношений санкций, которые разрушают наши отношения, безусловно.
Meanwhile, Russia intensifies its frontline attacks. Visegrad has been hit hard. 1 person has been killed, 11 injured. Kiev is also under drone and missile barrages. 2 have been reported dead over the weekend.
Зараз ще тривають роботи після нічного удару російських ракет і дронів. Масштабний був удар. Енергетика – основна ціль. Тут Росія не змінює свою тактику і досі намагається завдати Україні саме такого болю перед зимою. Важливо, що ми протидіємо. Важливо, що є збиття. 19 ракет вдалося збити.
And while Zelensky is blasting Russia through words, Putin is locking the front lines to favorable conditions.
Мы до сих пор получаем заходы о прекращении боевых действий там. Войска Украины уйдут из занимаемых ими территорий. Вот тогда и прекратятся боевые действия. Не уйдут, мы добьемся этого вооруженным путем. Вот и все. Порядок. Там уже 1000 фур прошло. Я думаю, что те на Западе, кто понимают, к чему это может привести.
And I thought this would be one of the easier ones because of my relationship with President Putin. But this is probably one of the more difficult ones. There's a lot of hatred.
Not much has changed since the negotiations in Geneva. The core red lines clash is still Ukraine rejecting territorial concessions.
Російська війна триває, і ми всі чуємо, що Росія плює на намагання ключових світових держав закінчити війну реально, тривалим миром. Але чи буде мир, залежить не від погроз Росії, не від того, які там ультиматуми звучать, а від того, які умови забезпечить світ.
Putin too is adamant. He demands international recognition of his gains.
Конечно, мы хотим договориться в конечном итоге с Украиной. Но это сейчас просто практически невозможно. Невозможно юридически. От них, кто может, кто хочет, тот пускай ведет переговоры. Нам нужно, чтобы наши решения были международно признаны основными международными игроками.
Meanwhile, the European Union is torn. On one hand, the Union is warning that Putin won't stop.
I'm often asked why we are so fixated on Russia's war against Ukraine when there are so many wars and conflicts affecting us all ongoing today, especially in the Middle East. But the answer is very simple. Russia's war in Ukraine is an existential threat. If Putin is not stopped, he will not stop.
And while the EU is expressing its skepticism on Putin's intentions, Hungary's Orban called on for peace and deepened energy cooperation with Russia this week when he was in Moscow, signaling that there is no complete consensus amongst European nations too for a peace strategy in Ukraine.
Ukrajna Magyarország szomszédja. Ukrajna – это сосед Венгрии, ezért a háborúnak a hatása Magyarországra erőteljes. Поэтому Венгрия в полной мере ощущает влияние украинского конфликта на себе. Jelentős gazdasági veszteségeket szenvedünk el. В том числе неся ощутимые экономические потери. A katonai műveletek azok blokkolják a gazdasági növekedést egész Európában és így nálunk is. Потому что экономическое взаимодействие блокируется боевыми действиями. Это верно как в отношении Европы, так и в отношении нас. El fogom mondani önnek azt, amit a korábbi találkozóinkon is elmondtam, hogy Magyarország érdekelt a békében. Скажу также то, что говорил вам на нашей предыдущей встрече. Венгрия заинтересована в мире.
The big question now is, did Trump jump the gun on acceptance?
You can't have a peace agreement with only using one side, namely the Russians. And it seems to me showing something which is untrue in regard to Ukraine. Ukraine has not signed on to this. Ukraine's European partners had not signed on to it. And immediately there were further discussions in Geneva, in Switzerland, about it.
Ukraine calls it a spin to pressure Zelensky.
Well, there is a plan, the initial plan that was developed with Dmitriev, that's the plan developed by Russians and by Americans, and this plan includes certain aspects to which Ukraine will never agree, to which Europe will never agree, because those things can eventually lead to even bigger war in Europe, even bigger Russian invasion, lack of security in the future. So those are non-starters, and that's why even Trump himself now recognized that he will not be pressuring Zelensky too much.
Ukrainians are adamant on guarantees. US is pushing for a deal first and guarantees later.
Well, the deal breaker for Ukraine are security guarantees. The most important thing is that Russia does not use this plan as something to just take a little pause in the war and then go and reinvade Ukraine and use their territory, which it already occupied, just as a platform from which it will be invading further into Ukraine.
It's completely unrealistic to say you do deal first and you do commitments on security later. The whole point is not to appease Russia and be sort of a Neville Chamberlain going to Munich for peace in our time, which did not work, but having long-term peace on the continent, which affects peace everywhere in the world.
Meanwhile, Moscow says it is ready for serious discussions as it sees US positioning towards them.
I think that it only demonstrates that Russia is ready for any type of dialogue with West countries, including the United States. Russia won't finish this war started by the West and by NATO on Ukraine, and a dialogue is going to be a good solution.
Ukraine knows the writing on the wall. A winter stalemate looms, making conditions ideal for a ceasefire.
Ukraine is ready for ceasefire any day. And ever since Trump started negotiating with the Russians about the peace agreement, Ukraine said that what we want is to have immediate ceasefire and then to keep negotiating about all those difficult matters. But the issue is that it is Russia who is not accepting the ceasefire.
Peace or deadlock? Time is running out. The front lines are hardening, and while the talks are still lying in fractures, the big question is, will Witkoff's Moscow trip break the impasse or expose the unbridgeable gaps? As winter bites, Trump's peace clock ticks louder.
Well, we'll keep close tabs of the developments there on that front. The Russia-Ukraine peace deal brokered by the United States. Moving on and back home, in a stunning political U-turn, West Bengal's Mamata Banerjee government has bowed to the centre's Waqf Amendment Act after months of fierce opposition. From courtroom battles to public defiance, TMC's resistance crumbles as the state scrambles to upload 80,000 plus Waqf properties by December 5th deadline, which is this week. What forced this dramatic about turn after the SIR surrender? Here's the inside story.
After making a political slugfest of the new Waqf law for months, the Mamata government of West Bengal has surrendered to the writ of the parliament.
और माइनॉरिटी लोगों को हम एक बात कहते हैं, देखिए आप लोगों को दिल में दुख हुआ है वक़्फ प्रॉपर्टी के लेके, आप भरोसा रखिए बंगाल में ऐसा कुछ नहीं होगा जिसमें कोई डिवाइड एंड रूल होगा। आप लोगों ने ये मैसेज दीजिए कि सबको एक साथ में रह के बचना है।
This was Mamta's pitch, clearly aimed at appeasing a section of electorate in the state. But now the same Mamta government has directed its minorities department to uphold information of 82,000 Waqf properties across the state on the centre's portal by December 5th. This order was issued for compliance by all Bengal districts by the Secretary of Minorities Department of the state. Most opposition states had refused to adopt the Waqf law as passed by the Parliament in April this year, Bengal included. So what changed?
Number one, I don't see any U-turn in any of the acts by Srimati Mamata Banerjee. The thing is that, accepting the Waqf bill is something different, and what she has taken up right at the moment is, which was already, which had nothing to do with the entire Waqf bill, because earlier also, there used to be a system called VAMSI, the earlier database that was being run by the center till 2024. It was called VAMSI, and VAMSI already had, these 80,000 properties registered over there. So it is only like registering the same data onto a new portal called Ummeed. I think the central government is still trying to confuse the people of West Bengal.
After the SIR, this is the second about turn by the Mamata government this month after political grandstanding with the centre.
একটা মানুষের যদি নাম বাদ যায়, একটা বৈধ ভোটারের যদি নাম বাদ যায়, বাংলা থেকে 1 লক্ষ লোক গিয়ে ইলেকশন কমিশনের অফিস ঘেরাও করবে। ক্ষমতা থাকলে অমিত শাহর দিল্লি পুলিশ আটকে দেখাক।
Despite some politicking, even the Election Commission mandated the SIR is getting implemented in West Bengal, with most TMC leaders cooperating.
আগে ওয়াকফ বিলের বিরোধিতায় ভারতবর্ষের যে ক্ষতি, ভারত সরকারের যে সমস্ত ক্ষতিগুলো করা হয়েছে, রেল পোড়ানো হয়েছে, স্টেশন ভাঙা হয়েছে, মানুষকে খুন করা হয়েছে, তার মূল্য বাংলার মুখ্যমন্ত্রী মমতা বন্দ্যোপাধ্যায়কে দিতে হবে। এবং ঘুরে 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 ওয়াকফ বিলের সম্মতি আজকের দিনে কেন?
And there is also the fact that TMC went to the court against the Waqf amendment but did not get a favourable order.
She has been provoking the minorities of West Bengal. We have seen Bengal burning for consecutively 2 days during the CAA issue. And now she again tried to play with fire, play with the lives and the emotions of the minorities by provoking them and misleading them in the Waqf bill, which has been finally made into law. So Mamata Banerjee and her ministers, now they have taken a U-turn. After 7 months of dilly-dallying, Mamata Banerjee had to give in. So this is a fact that it's a win by the central government, victory of the constitution.
Now over the next 5 days, the district administrations would hold meetings and workshops with Waqf administrators, while senior officials would monitor daily progress to meet the December 5th deadline.
On to some trade deal talk. In the shadow of a bitter diplomatic rift that froze trade talks for 2 years, Canada and India are now turning a new leaf. After Prime Minister Justin Trudeau's controversial speech in Parliament that deeply strained ties, his successor, Mark Carney, is pushing to resume negotiations on a comprehensive economic partnership agreement. This deal could double bilateral trade to up to $50 billion between India and Canada by 2030. Let's take a deep dive.
2 years on, Trudeau's pro-Khalistani speech in Parliament triggered a crisis. That moment chilled decades of stable India-Canada ties.
Over the past number of weeks, Canadian security agencies have been actively pursuing credible allegations of a potential link between agents of the government of India and the killing of a Canadian citizen, Hardeep Singh Nijjar.
India expelled Canadian High Commissioner and recalled its ambassador. Trade talks were stalled and bilateral warmth frozen in time. Now Trudeau's successor, Mark Carney, is pushing a fresh start. Talks resume this week. Modi and Carney met on the G20 sidelines in Johannesburg, showing a moment signaling Thaw and new priorities. Their first meeting since G7 in Canada earlier this year. With ambassadors back in place, dialogue is accelerating. Amid the US-Canada tariff war hitting historic lows, Canada seeks new partners. India battles Trump's tariffs, refusing to bow on issues of sovereignty and national interest. While India is vying for more market access, technological cooperation and energy deals, Canadian focus remains on tapping the potential in agri-tech, mineral deals, clean energy and innovation-led partnerships.
There's a lot that we can learn from Canada, a lot that we can offer Canada. We have tremendous potential on critical minerals, critical mineral processing technologies. We can diversify our supply chains on both sides of the ocean. We can focus on emerging technologies like artificial intelligence with data centers, quantum computing, machine learning, all new age technologies where India has very strategic benefits to offer.
Beyond the trade, the countries are nearing a $2.8 billion uranium deal, signaling strategic depth beyond economics.
This is an ongoing conversation that we have with Canada. This particular matter was also discussed when our Prime Minister met with Prime Minister Carney in Johannesburg. We shall keep you updated with developments, but it's an important part of India-Canada bilateral cooperation as to how we can further strengthen our civil nuclear cooperation.
The revived CEPA talks come at a crucial time. Both sides weigh concessions, market reform and dispute mechanisms.
As far as Canada is concerned, we all know that over the last few years, because of a buffoon called Dustbin Trudeau, the discussions that we were having on trade agreements were stalled because that man was a complete idiot. And he's finally met his doomsday and he's been booted out of all political circles. Now we are trying to repair our relationship as far as trade is concerned with Canada, and that is what we always do. We never hold a grudge against an individual or a government or a country for long. What is the benefit of a FTA? I've been a member of a group that has looked at this closely. The first benefit is, in theory, that it should give you access to markets. The Canadians are drooling over the size of the Indian market, 1.4 billion. Because the Chinese market is close to them, they are unable to do anything with Europe. Europe does not have the money. And so they are effectively looking at Bharat.
You have to understand what Canadian economic priorities are, and they don't really jive with what goes on in this side of the world. So how could Canada leverage it? Well, I mean, Canada could do a lot of things, right? They could, offer to give up on a lot of the narco-terrorism, Khalistani drug trafficking nonsense that undermines India geopolitically, and then leverage that for market access. But that would assume that Canada cares about two things. One would be safety and security of Canada and other allied nations, which we do not. And the other thing we would assume is we care about standard economic prosperity, which we do not either. Canada and Carney economics is very much not the standard economics that you would find. Like if India and the UAE want to do a trade deal, that's very easy to get done. Because India and the UAE will find, what do both people benefit from? What's a good price? And both leadership of the country would understand that general economic prosperity of either oil or goods or lumber or whatever it is would bring a net benefit to all the people, and then bring them the adoration of the people in India and the UAE respectively.
With a $50 billion target by 2030, this deal could reshape both economies. India at the moment is balancing multiple free trade agreements, including one with United States, one with European Union, and now Canada adding to the list, managing priorities amidst the global trade volatility.
By 2004, we had moved from a 4% growth to an 8.4% growth. Inflation had come down from 8% to 4%. Forex reserves had grown 3x. Banking interest rates were amongst the lowest India had ever seen. A strong economy, despite sanctions and despite all the difficulties.
Basically, what we would like to do with all countries, irrespective of what we are doing with Canada or anybody else, when we discuss these, we first say that you should have transparency. There should be no arrogance. You shouldn't expect that we will lower our tariffs while you increase yours. Don't create non-tariff barriers because that doesn't benefit anybody. So mera apna manna hai, my own feeling is that the European Union, which really does very little intra-EU trade compared to its potential, and China is close to them almost permanently till the present regime is there because Europe has been misbehaving, so the Chinese claim with them. I have a feeling they also want to sign an agreement with India. We of course also want that the agreement should include the possibility of free movement of personnel. If our experts want to go there, if they have to be hired by European companies or American companies, then the barriers to their recruitment, to their hiring should be removed. Then it will be genuinely a partnership. Otherwise it becomes piecemeal.
As US-Canada trade tensions deepen, it is becoming another factor driving Canada closer to India.
No country wants to sort of take the initiative to gain upper ground. The Americans live in Americaverse, where there's bald eagles and guns going off, and they don't really see the rest of the world. It's sort of their classic charming cowboy ignorance of the rest of the world. And India is a very, very passive global player. They do not make the first move. They do not try and set the precedent. They try and, do deals and try and, do bilateral relations and don't try and get bogged down in these grand economic schemes. They're sort of a more passive player on the international scale, trying to sort of pick off deals here and there to sort of build economic links between them and other countries. It's very much not in Indian DNA to sort of push the initiative and leverage Canada and America relations for Indian gain. There's not really, you don't really have that dynamic soft power apparatus that would be needed to do something like that.
The reset between India and Canada promises more than numbers. It offers a recalibration of priorities and trust. As ambassadors return and talks ignite, the questions remain: will this new chapter deliver a game-changing partnership for two of the world's most dynamic democracies?
MDH की हल्दी मिर्ची धनिया करे कमाल, ये रंग दे, ये खुशबू दे, ये तीखा, ये कम पड़े, क्या निराला MDH मसाला।
आर प्योर शाही पनीर मसाला, डिलीशियस, हेल्दी एवरीडे।
दादी के हाथों का जादू और खुशबू से महकता घर, माँ की मुस्कुराहट और खाने की सुगंध। MDH गरम मसाला,
क्योंकि हर रिश्ता है स्वाद से जुड़ा।
China and Japan are clashing verbally over Taiwan. Tensions between China and Japan have risen over Taiwan's security. Japan has signaled it may intervene in a potential conflict, viewing it as a threat to its own stability. China condemned this as meddling, issuing strong warnings and summoning diplomats. This conflict started when Japan's newly appointed Prime Minister, Sanae Takaichi, issued a direct warning to China during a session of the country's parliament. She stated that a conflict in the Taiwan Strait could represent a survival-threatening situation for Japan, implying that Tokyo might need to intervene militarily to protect its interests. This marked a bold escalation in Japan's stance on the Taiwan issue, signaling readiness to support Taiwan against potential Chinese action. Takaichi's comments, delivered amid rising regional tensions, prompted an immediate and sharp rebuke from Beijing, highlighting the fragile balance in East Asia and
the great Mr. Gurumurthy, but just to know that, to share with all of you that we are very lucky to live in his presence, and he is India's top public intellectual. He is a lawyer. He is an activist. I describe him as a warrior. He has fought corporate groups. He's a nationalist. He's a journalist. He's an editor. The most powerful of politicians come to him for advice, and we are very lucky to have him as our mentor here at the Republic Media Network. And he has been my mentor for a long time, and he has always supported me in everything that I have done. So, Mr. Gurumurthy, I think we're all looking forward very much, sir, to hearing you today in our closing session. Thank you for being with us, sir. Thank you.
Namaskaram to all. Arnab introduced me, among other things, that I'm an economist. In fact, I learned my economics in the streets of India. The society was the open-air university for me to learn about economics. Though I was a student of economics, I had familiarity with economics of different kinds, whether it is the Marxist economics or the Weberian economics or the market economics, which has been sweeping the world for the last 30 years. I am fairly familiar with economics as a subject, as a theory, but I became more familiar with economics when I was asked to lead the Swadeshi movement in the 1990s. When I took up that responsibility, I was a corporate advisor and I had my own claims about understanding modern business, modern finance, law. But everybody asked, what has he to do with Swadeshi? To talk of Swadeshi those days, which is translated into Atmanirbharta today in India, and economic nationalism abroad, to talk about Swadeshi those days was a demeaning affair. In fact, when I addressed the administrative staff college in Hyderabad, a large crowd was there. In those days, I was the only person presenting the alternative viewpoint, so I used to get a lot of crowd. Just as a curiosity as to what this man talks against globalization. Globalization was the mantra. It was a one-way traffic. If anybody talked against globalization, there is something wrong with this man. That was the kind of assumption. There was a wholesale defection of the whole world. From the socialist state-controlled model to the market model. Nobody understood what it was, but everybody said it is the American model, which is the model for the world, and so everybody defected to that. But some of us felt that this is something seriously wrong, because I had deep connections with the corporate India and I had discussions with them, and nobody was clear about what was happening. I must have met at least some 20-30 industrialists to find out, what do you understand about this globalization? They said, we don't know what this new animal will do. There was only one man who had some clarity about that. I will talk later. But the fact remains that it was swimming against current those days. What is now being talked about, accepted, and even America holds, Trump America says, economic nationalism was the Swadeshi at that time in India. So in the Administrative Staff College of India, when I began addressing about Swadeshi, and I began explaining that this globalization is an unsustainable proposition. You cannot have global order without a global government, and you cannot create a global government means you cannot have a global order, economic order also. But at that time, everything was centered on one power, a single power, America. And so whatever they wanted the world to do, the world accepted to do. And it was founded on one ideological premise, which Francis Fukuyama wrote in his book, The End of History and the Lost Man, that the Western order has finally won against the rest, and it is best for the rest to follow the West, was the basis of globalization. So it may be the liberal democracy or market, free market, or the Western way of life. Everything became acceptable as the universally valid proposition world over. And so some of us who opposed it were regarded as some people called us Neanderthal economists, that we are taking the country thousands of years back. So in the Administrative Staff College of India, when I was addressing, an official stood up, a former government official stood up and said, people like you must be shot dead because you are taking the country 500 years back. That was the discourse in India. It was against the discourse we were swimming. I had seen industrialists being advised by the government officials, you better sell your industry today to foreigners, otherwise you will sell them as scrap tomorrow. This was the national situation. So, if you have to understand what is happening today, you have to go 30 years back in 1991. As compared to that, today, 900 million Indians were born after 1991. And 360 million have died. And so 600 million Indians who are 18 and 35 were born after 1991. They may not even know what happened at that time. So there has been a massive shift in the country between 1994 and 2025. The world has turned upside down. From a conflict-free world, which was promised as the final victory of the West over all conflicts, so that the West will ensure that there is no conflict in the world, we were all lured into that order, the order of peace, prosperity. And what was globalization? In fact, many people used to ask me, what is Swadeshi? I used to say, Swadeshi, the nation is the core. The global is the additive. It is not that we can live without the world. We have to live with the world. But the world will only contribute to you. You have to be the core. The national effort has to be the core. The national confidence, the national effort, the national policies, and the national industries, and the national parties, political parties, all of them had lost confidence at that time. We all used to say that we have to be a nation first, because they said the world is one village and the idea of nation itself is outdated. That was the discourse at that time. And globalization was defined. The world as the core and nation as the additive. This was the difference between globalization and national economics. But from that time today, if you look at where the world stands, there have been three distinct changes. One, a single one-pole power position, the world has shifted to multipolarity. Multipolar world is not a formal world. Informally, the power has diffused from one source to lot of middle countries rising to share the power. Under the Center for Foresight of the European Commission said, by 2030, there will be no hegemonic power in the world, and there will be multipolar power, each country exercising power in its own way, with its resources, with its influence and sphere, with its education, with its strength, with its demography. So it said that the world is moving towards what the world was in 1990s to a very different picture emerges. The next is, we were all told modernity means only what the West stands for, because the West drew its modernity from the days of enlightenment, the single source of modernity. But now it is accepted. There are multiple modernities in the world. In 2007, Sebastian Conrad, he was one of the greatest historians, and he came with his thesis that each civilization modernizes in its own way. Japan modernizes as Nihon Jinran. China modernizes as Neo-Confucian society. So nobody wants to adopt one way of modernity, one dress, one language, one way of life. And so India will also modernize in its own way. So this is not what the Indian discourse, Indian media, Indian academics, Indian political parties or the Indian administrative service speak about. But the fact is, we are also modernizing in our own way. This is a new concept. It is not that the world is becoming multipolar without becoming multi-modern. Modernity has asserted itself in the last 25-30 years. I will give you examples. The post-World War II world order was anti-civilizational. In 1951, the United Nations Measures for the Development of Underdeveloped Nations, which was largely adopted by the United States of America, said that if you want to develop, you have to scrap your philosophy. You have to scrap your social relationship. You have to become part of what the West is for you to develop. And any society which is unable to accept this will have to accept low standard of life. This was an official advisory of the United Nations on the basis of which policies were being made by all the underdeveloped countries. And there was no difference between the free market society and communists because both of them hated civilization, and America, of course, had no civilization at all. And so all of them were anti-civilizational according to them. Unless you forget the past, disown the past, scrap the past, hate the past, you can never develop. This was the accepted position in the world, including in India. And China even went to the extent of waging a war against its civilization in the Cultural Revolution. For 9 years, they destroyed everything worth having regarding the past, whether it is Confucius' name, whether it is Buddhism, whether it is any statue or Buddha Vihara, they destroyed everything. But that Chinese Communist Party leader Xi Jinping in 2021, when he addressed the centenary of the Communist Party, he said, 10,000-year-old Chinese civilization will guide us today and forever in future, because they have no other identity than to go back to their past. Russia, which killed millions of people to destroy its past, in 2024, Putin declared Russia as a civilizational state. You know, every society is now coming into its own, and that is the beginning of what can be called civilizational nationalism, and which is spreading in India also. Now I will go into what is happening in the world in the sense of how nationalism is getting into economics. I'm just quoting, just you touch artificial intelligence about economic nationalism. This is what it says. Economic nationalism is experiencing a significant global resurgence, marked by retreat from globalization and prioritization of national economic and security interests over international cooperation. This trend is evident in policies worldwide, particularly in the United States, China, and the European Union, driven by geopolitical tensions, supply chain vulnerabilities, and domestic political pressures. A research done by Cambridge University's 3 scholars, I'm just quoting it. The paper which they have produced examines the resurgence of industrial policy and national security across the United States, China, and the European Union. We analyze how these three major economic powers are implementing distinct approaches to industrial policy while pursuing similar objective in technological leadership and also national economic prosperity. The US has adopted a hawkish stance with extensive trade policies and subsidies. China has pursued ambitious growth in the range of sectors with long-term planning and strong governmental control. Even the European Union has begun doing it. So what we fought for in India in 1990s is what the world is doing today. It is not because we were the forerunners, but the fact is the idea of globalization, the project of globalization founded on the supremacy of the West over the rest forever has collapsed. Globalization has collapsed because it was a collapsible model. Why it collapsed? The background to the collapse of globalization are three major events. One was the 2008 financial crisis of America, which was founded on the basis that one superpower with its super currency, with its super efficient economic model, will be able to guide the whole world in that direction. That was the basis of globalization. And the financial model was so perfected that dollar, which had the backing of gold and was considered equal to gold, and even after the gold ceased to be backing the dollar, in 1990s, the dollar unbacked by anything other than the name United States of America became equal to gold and became even more valuable than the gold. So in 1998, when the financial collapse occurred, even the greatest economists could not explain why the collapse occurred. In fact, Alan Greenspan, who headed the US Federal Reserve System for 19 years, he was examined by the Congress. He was called the god of money. He could create money out of thin air. In 1997, he addressed the Stanford University. I couldn't understand why he addressed the Stanford University. He should have addressed the US Federal Reserve System. He said it is not possible to control the supply of dollars outside. And so we will not be able to fight inflation. So they decided to import goods from cheaper sources to contain inflation and print and export dollars. So in 1989, The Economist magazine said, the most profitable industry in America is the printing and exporting of dollars. So America exported dollars, printed and exported dollars, because the American name carried that weight in the world, and imported goods. With the result, between 1976 and now, America has printed and exported $15 trillion worth dollars and imported goods. And for that, it brought down the tariffs, and it made the whole world search the American market, which was, of course, taken advantage of by China. And now America finds that dollar is no more the admired currency. And in fact, dollar is now an enforced currency. For instance, if this BRICS will produce its own monetary system, Trump said, I will finish you if you don't use dollar. From an admired currency, dollar has become an autocratic power-backed currency. You can understand the shift that has taken place in the American economy. And what Trump is trying to do is to reverse it. He is trying to put up the tariffs to ensure that the imports come down or the import prices are up, so that the people pay for the deficits which America has incurred in the past. As I told you, $15 trillion is the current account deficit. And every year they are incurring a budget deficit of $1.2 trillion. And it is deficit at home and deficit abroad. America is in an unenviable position And Trump is trying to ensure that at least fight this trend. I can understand if anybody is advising Trump, they will advise this. But the problem of America is not an economic problem. It's a much deeper problem. America has attuned itself to overliving. Every economist today accepts that America, American families, American corporates, American government, they spend more than what they earn. That is the most important thing. For example, whether it is because the families have collapsed. The family support mechanism, which is essential for a society, about which I will deal with when I come to the Indian context, that it is a sharing mechanism. I was in America, in UCLA, when I was addressing the management students. I asked all the management students a question. Who are all supported by your family for your higher education? All Indians and Asians raised their hand. Not a single white student raised the hand. Then I asked them the question, who is taking educational loan and studying this course? All the white students raised their hand. I came to IIT Madras. I asked the same question to the MBA students. Who are borrowing money and studying MBA? Not a single student raised the hand. Who are all being supported by your families for your higher education? Everyone raised their hand. This is the family support mechanism. And the family support mechanism is the social capital which America has lost. And the American government went to the extent of telling the Americans in 1960s, which was the turning point of America beginning to decline, that you need not take care of your parents, you need not take care of anybody. You pay us 12%, 12.5% social security tax, we will take care of everybody. At that time, in 1980, many economists warned the American government. If you want, you can Google and get a beautiful book, US Economy in Transition, by the National Bureau of Economic Research in 1980, where the economists told the American government, don't interfere with the intergenerational obligations of people. The government can never substitute itself in the place of the family. And it said, we have already handed over the kitchen to multinationals. In America, nobody cooks. There is no kitchen in home. It is only the malls which give you food. You take home, heat it up and eat it. And he said, if there is no kitchen and if there is no responsibility to take care of the parents and youngsters, educate them, then what is the function left in the family? A functionless family can never last. This was the advice given by economists, including Milton Friedman, who got the Nobel Prize in 1965 on the monetary theory. But American politicians were also like our politicians. He said, don't worry, we will take care of you. We will do this. We will do this. With the result, the American government has become virtually insolvent today only because of the dollar strength. The American government is surviving. And in fact, if there is so much of current account deficit, the dollar should be losing its value according to economics, rules of economics. So a question was asked, how is it when the current account deficit is zooming, the dollar value is not coming down, it is going up? So two Harvard economists came out with a fantastic explanation that the dollar value is not governed by the rules of economics, it is governed by the rules of physics. What is the rule of physics? There is a dark matter which sustains the universe. That is the rule of physics. So there is a dark matter which sustains the dollar. What is the dark matter? The American strength, the American power, the American influence, the American acceptability, the American military. This is the dark power which sustains the dollar. And you see now, that dark power is shaking. That is the problem of America, which Trump is trying to handle. And now, The entire globalization, as I told you, is based on the victory of the West over the rest, and particularly Asia. But that is now turning. Now the rise of Asia, China, India, Indonesia, and generally the global south, is demolishing the very theory of globalization, and I am going to tell you what is likely to happen in future. By 2050, China will be the number one economy in the world. That is undisputed. Who will be the number two economy? It is neck and neck between India and America. Neck and neck. The unanimous opinion. And European Union, its share will get reduced to less than 10%. And emerging market economies, E7, out of the 7 top nations in the world, 6 out of 7 emerging market economies will be the top 7 economies. This is the global picture. And how it came, you will be amazed. Because unless you have a helicopter view to understand how the theoretical foundations of Western economics developed and how they assessed the rest of the world, and particularly to large countries like India and China, you cannot understand where the West went wrong. 2 great minds in the West, one Karl Marx, another Max Weber, they shaped the modern West. In fact, Max Weber was supposed to be the founder of modern Western liberal society based on individualism. And Max Weber and Karl Marx, their assessment of India and China is worth quoting. Karl Marx wrote an article, 2 articles, in the New York Herald Tribune in 1853, where he said India is a country which is a very unique country. Its economy is organized on the basis of village republics. People are very happy. There is no exploitation. The gap between the producer and the consumer is so little. It is some kind of a primitive socialism. But unfortunately, this country has not changed for the last 2,000 years. It is worshipping cows and monkeys, and so it is a semi-barbaric society. That there was no economic problem, but this society is worshipping monkeys and cows. And he was the guy who influenced almost the whole of India after independence. Every left, liberal, progressive thinker would somewhat relate to Karl Marx in India. And so he convinced the West that India is a semi-barbaric society. And then Max Weber, he was the one who conceptualized the Western development model as based on Protestant Christian ethics, based on individualism, enterprise, and that is the basis of entrepreneurship, which is the basis of modern capitalism. He was right, because for 30 years he studied the Protestant and Catholic societies and came to the conclusion the Catholic societies can never match the Protestant societies in entrepreneurship, which is true, because all the Protestant nations were going up in economic growth, and all the Catholic nations were lagging behind. But he wrote 2 books on India and China. He said these 2 societies can never come up because they believe in karma and rebirth, which works against a spirit of enterprise. And so these 2 societies will never come up. But unfortunately, the research done by Paul Byrock and Angus Madison that came between 1980 and 2001, which said for 1700 years, India and China were the leading economic engine of the world. In 1750, the combined share of GDP of India and China was 58%, and that of England and America 2%. In 1900, the whole thing turns upside down. India and China crashed to 8%. China 6.8% and India 1.2%. and England and America raced to 42%. This data was not available to Karl Marx or Max Weber. If they had this data, they would never have said that a country like India and China can never develop. This is where the West went wrong. When they globalized, they thought this globalization will benefit only people who know how to operate economics. China did not know how to operate economics, but it knew how to operate the people who operate economics, and they looted America. America produced a Frankenstein monster by giving more MFN facilities to China, giving them all the technologies, and China became the factory to produce goods for America. And of course, all kinds of political influences were there to defeat Russia, which was the greatest ambition of America, which made them expand the NATO, which has resulted in the Ukraine war, benefited China. But India was always careful. Whether it is this party or that party ruling, we calibratedly accepted globalization. We never wholeheartedly accepted globalization. It is because the society of India would never allow globalized ideas to enter. And that is the reason why we are a different society. Now, I will come to it a bit later as to what we mean by Atmanirbharta. Before that, I will have to deal with Trump's MAGA. Trump's MAGA is the first major admission of the failure of globalization. Because he was the only one to say there is no globalism hereafter. It is America first. Once you call a nation first, the first thing you reject is globalization and international cooperation. That is the first thing. Second thing is MAGA implies that America, which was great, has ceased to be great. It has to be made great again. He is the first person to admit the decline of America. That is what has made Americans support him in such large measure in 2024. Apart from the fact that there are other problems associated with America which is not discussed very deeply in the public discourse, but which we must know. The media in India, the intellectuals in India, the academics in India must know this. You know, in 1960, of the American population, 87.5% were non-Hispanic white population. About 11% was black and the balance 1 or 2% were others. It was at that time Kennedy declared that we will build a global, we will invite the whole world to build America, and they went on to, at that time the civil rights movement was there. Till then they allowed only white immigrants. So when the civil rights movement came, multiracial immigration came into America. You know what is the position of America today? Today 58% is only the white Hispanic, non-Hispanic whites. America is ceasing to be a white nation. America called itself a WASP nation, white Anglo-Saxon Protestant nation. This was the identity of India given by Samuel Huntington in 1998 when he was thrashed. But there is a racial element in America today. All of you are seeing it. And that racial element is powering the Republican Party. And this whole idea of fight against immigration and the idea of tariff are only externalities. So there is a deeper racial drive. And where it will land America, God alone knows, but I will give you only 2 indications of what is happening. You know, Pew Research in America, it's one of the most premier research institutions. It came out in the paper in 2020 that in America there is a bipartisan politics is the only point of commonality in America. There is no other commonality in this country. In 2015, the Time magazine wrote about the commonality in generally the Christian nations. There are 30,000 canonized saints in Italy. Every locality has one. In America, till today, there are only 3 canonized saints. There is no sacred place. There is no sacred mountain. There is no sacred river. America is a real estate. There is no common point of Americans except the American Constitution, courts, and what they call as the American way of life. With the result, now 60% of the Republicans won't marry into Democrats' houses. 65% of the Democrats won't marry into Republican houses. There is a vertical division in the society. And the division is in the family. Father and son are not talking. Daughter and mother are not talking. And it has seared the society so much. In 2022 September, you can Google and read, 6 defense secretaries and 5 American chiefs of staff wrote a letter to Pentagon. If a Trump or Trump-like figure contests the 2024 election and loses, there will be civil war in America, and the army will not maintain neutrality. And the civil war will not be at the border. It will be based on color. It will be based on religion. It will be based on region. This is the state of America. Because it doesn't have one common base. It is a top-down nation. Then I immediately I was there for 3 days in Kumbh Mela. 65 crore people are assembled. Who invited them? What brought them together? It's some consciousness. It is a bottom-upwards nation. They are top-down nations. Arun Shourie has written it beautifully in his secular agenda. How the European nations were formed. They were formed by marriages. They were formed by concubinages. They were formed by conquests. When France was formed, less than 3% of the people knew the French language. When Italy was formed, less than 7% of the people knew Italian language. It is the powerful people who brought the people together, shaped them into nation, and turned them into what it is. Only in this 18th and 19th centuries, the idea of nation state developed in the West. So, these are basically unstable societies, including in America. Everybody thinks America is a very stable country, but I want all of you to very critically study what is happening in America, which will show that America is moving towards a crisis, and it is not only moving towards a crisis, it will land the whole world in crisis, because it has integrated the whole world to such an extent that whether it is in terms of dollars or in terms of, 16% of America today consists of immigrants. And those 16% immigrants, if you calculate, nearly 30 crore people are linked to America. And it is investment, it is trade, industries, employment. Everything is linked through dollar. And that society and that state is in a critical condition. So 4 dates completely changed this world. One is the general financial crisis in 2008. Second is the COVID. And the third is the Ukraine war. Henry Kissinger, who shaped the post-World War order, post-Cold War order, he said as soon as the COVID advent came, the world order will change forever. And in 2022, when Ukraine war came, he addressed the economist meeting in Switzerland. And he said that unless this war is ended soon, the world order will be restructured forever. Trump has begun doing it in 2025. This is how we should understand. Because America now feels it cannot take the responsibility of running the world. And it wants to go back to the isolation policy which it adopted till the early 20th century. And at this point, I must mention there is a paradigm shift in the world between 1990s now. In 1990s, you go into any economic literature, there is nothing called environment. There is no relationship between environment and economics. But today, you cannot separate economics from environment. Because environment has become one of the biggest problems of the world. In 1990, the world discharged 6 billion tons of CO2. In 1990, 22 billion. Today, 37 billion. And so far, of all the greenhouse gas emissions, the share of America is 25%. The share of Europe is 20%. These people have dirtied the world and developed themselves. And now they are saying, you should not dirty it. This is going to be a huge development versus economics. And that's where the turning point, many people have not noticed it. It is becoming a very important geopolitical turning point when the Prime Minister mentioned in 2023 G20 meeting, one earth, one family, one future. This captured the relationship between economics and environment. In fact, how? We are a living example of it. Many people do not know. In fact, I have mentioned it in some of the programs in Republic. How India is a living example of alignment between economics and environment. I will take only 3 issues. One is food. We are just 2.4% of global land area. We have 18% of human population. We have 30% of bovine population. Our total cattle population is 42%. We have 8% bioresources. It is an ecological wonder as to how in such a small place, such huge human, animal, bovine population could live together. Take America. It is 3.5 times the size of India. But its bovine population is 1/5. How is it that we are able to feed all this? In fact, I saw the statistics in 1960s when we did not have food. But at that time, the cattle population kept increasing and we did not eat the cattle. Because we felt that they have also the right to live. All this was achieved by one factor, the proportion between meat and cereal in India. Our average consumption of meat is 3.5 kg per head per annum. We are also non-vegetarians. 75% of the Indians are non-vegetarians. But for us, meat is only sabji. It is not the main take. Because we were cereal eaters, cereals give you 83% of the calorie value. And meat gives only 17% of the calorie value. Cereals give you 37% of the protein value. And meat gives only 37% of the protein value. With the result, India is able to feed its huge population by the additional energy that you get from cereals. And you look at America, it is the reverse. Their average meat consumption is 124 kg per head per annum. And the cereal consumption is far less, about 68 kgs per annum. What is the difference? If all Indians take to American way of eating, we will need 6 times the agricultural land we have. Our country's size has to be 2.5 times more. If the entire world takes to Indian way of eating, we will need only 40% of the agricultural land we are cultivating today. How is it that our forefathers knew that you have more calorie value and protein value in cereal? I call it the Rishi-Krishi combination. That is what has sustained the food security of India. How many people, if you want to get to know the data of it, you can go to ourworldindata.com where you find all these figures. But this is not what our academics speak. This is not what our media speaks. Food. Then I will go to shelter. You know, the average number of persons in a house in India is 4.5. In America, it is 2.5. Because we live with our father, we live with our grandfather, 3 generations live together, we share. This sharing is a very important part of economics. And if all Indians decide to follow the American model of husband and wife or on husband and wife, man and woman living together, 48% of the Americans live together without marriage. Only 28% of the Americans live together with a child in the family. If we follow the same way of life, we will need 135 million more houses. In America, to build 35 million houses, they had to spend $8.5 trillion. The damage to environment, it has been calculated by the European Union that every additional house means so much percentage of addition to CO2. But does anybody look at the Indian way of life? How by sharing we are able to manage the home economics. It is not in the third point is, America says that you pay the tax, we will take care of the elders. In India, it cannot.